an email from Flowers Gallery in London via Sean Scully, the famous Sean Scully. I had to look twice at that email, and he chose me. Would you believe this shows you how Instagram works? He saw one of my pieces, which was in the RHA show.
And he found you on Instagram.
On Instagram, yeah.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to The Art as Well. My guest this morning is a graphic designer. He spent a lot of his early career in the advertising and design business. And then at a certain age, which we'll decide, we'll see if we can work out, he decided to pivot into art full time. And he did a master's in fine art, and he also did some other degree as well, which we'll discuss, and then became a full-time artist. So let's go straight over and say good morning to Denis Kelly. Good morning, Denis. How are you?
Good morning, Alan.
Great. Whereabouts are you, Denis?
I'm in Lixlip, County Kildare.
And is your studio part of your house?
Yeah, my studio is a garden studio at the back of my house.
Right.
So it's I'm not quite sure what size it is. I suppose it's about 20 feet by 20 feet roughly. You know,
yeah,
not huge. It's a large room, really, but
it's a good size. But your work doesn't tend to be very, very big, does it?
No, generally not. Not really. Not until more recently. I've been in some larger pieces, but
okay.
No, generally, no.
All right.
No.
Now, you and I would probably share a few contacts in the advertising world, since I was akin to that. Not quite in advertising. But nonetheless, we would have probably crossed paths at some stage, and certainly know similar, or people, mutually friends or whatever. But tell us about that, because you did spend quite a number of years in the graphic design business.
Yeah. It's I started off in an advertising agency, but this is around say 1980. In 1980, like advertising and design, there was a lot of design done in advertising agencies. So you did everything from brochure work, print work, as well as commercial advertising, like film and press ads, magazine ads. Like one of the first projects I worked on was Tara Holiday's the brochure. And
really? Yeah.
And I was making, those very intricate tables at the bottom of with prices.
Yes.
My job was to draw them. It sounds quite boring, but like typography was of a great interest to me, and layout, composition, all those were things that I was drawn towards, really. And because I was probably good at mechanical drawing in school, that sort of led me to, I could have, you could have gone architecturally, I could have gone architect, but I ended up doing design, and then sort of advertising and design together in those early days, So.
And that's obviously influenced what you're doing at the moment, hasn't it?
It does. It's followed me right into painting. You don't get away, but you're naturally good at it, I think.
So you changed in 2007 to taking up art full time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Now, at that point, you're using Letraset and various things, I'm quite sure. I mean, it must be extraordinary to look back at your previous career and see the changes that have occurred.
Yeah, unreal. Like in the very beginning, for headings in 1980, 79, 80, you were Letrasetting headlines.
Yeah.
And you were ordering typesetting from outside.
Yes.
In 2007, you're doing everything on the computer. Everything is, in fact, most of the process is done on the computer.
I know.
Now, the main thing to remember is that the computer won't come up with a good design. Well, I know AI is coming in now, or what happened then, but I mean, mainly the really good designers will come up with ideas with pencil and paper.
Yeah.
And everything follows from that, really.
Of course. So, but why did you make this transition? What was the sort of the burning desire to
change in the structure of the company, and was merging with another company, and it was an opportunity. I mean, I had I was probably maybe a little bit disillusioned with the way things were going. I was doing classes in evening in art for a while, 5-6 years.
Yes.
I was getting more involved in painting and in art. I was doing evening classes at NCAD, so I was drawn towards that. So this opportunity came, and that's how I ended up moving then. So I went and did a BA in Dunleary, and
Yes.
I followed with straight away. Some people wait for a while to do their masters, but I decided, well, let's just do this bit. Let's just keep it going. The momentum was there.
Mm-hmm.
So I finished that around 2014, I think it was.
Yes. Yes.
And so then I'm really a full-time artist, really.
And your work is very abstract. I mean, did you try things like portraiture and landscape?
Yes, that's
Just
very
to give it a lash and see how you'd get on.
In those early days, when I was doing those evening classes, yes, I was doing landscape.
Yeah.
Because very first, when I was a kid, down in Tipperary, I was drawing the landscape. I was drawing trees and things, and trees. Nature was the obvious thing to do when you're surrounded by it.
Yes. Yes.
So I used to make these sketches. I remember walking the fields and making these pencil sketches, and I was amazed how you could model, but the darker sketch shows, models the drawing, so you can get that illusion of depth.
Yeah.
So, but maybe when I went to did the masters, then I had all this history of design within. So I think maybe that sort of came through stronger. So,
of course, yeah.
You get distilled, you sort of become more reductive. I was leaning that way, so you can follow different paths, but that was where I went.
Yeah, no, it obviously makes sense.
Yeah.
And in terms of your practice and your career from that point, once you did your college days and all that kind of thing as a mature student, how did your practice and your career progress from there?
Yeah, you just find little opportunities here and there to show work. I mean, my first time I ever showed an exhibition was in the local library here.
Yes.
So in Lakeslip, and that was landscapes. I was still making those paintings with oil paint,
Mm-hmm.
and most of them were in of landscapes. So, and then sort of I began to look at different ways of looking at the landscape, that not making it the obvious realist, traditional image, and was trying to ways I was using Photoshop actually to change the color and try different things. And I don't have any examples of that to show you here, but eventually I distilled it down. So more opportunities arose. Visual Arts Ireland, I became a member of Visual Arts Ireland, and they you can see opportunities here and there come up that you'd enter a group show.
Yes.
The RHA was always there, so eventually I got in to the RHA after a few, after a number of turns.
Yeah.
I think I've shown in the RHA 5 or 6 times, in the annual show. And eventually I got a show actually in the Ashford Gallery in the RHA.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And in Kildare, you get the support of Kildare County Council through their art service. So that's a great support for people in Kildare and in the arts.
Yeah.
So it all developed from that on, really,
Okay. And what would you say is the sort of the highlight of your career? What was a moment in time where you say, "Woo, I'm in the big time"?
Well, in 2021, 22.
Yeah.
I got an email from Flowers Gallery in London, via Sean Scully, the famous Sean Scully.
Yes.
So that was it. I had to look twice at that email, but so he was what Sean was. He was putting something back, and he was trying to get the ordinary, the unheroic artists who paint in their loft or
Yes.
to get some from Ireland, some from the UK in an exhibition called Hidden UK, Hidden Ireland, and he was asking Flowers Gallery to facilitate. So that and he chose me. Would you believe this shows you how Instagram works? He saw one of my pieces, which was in the RHA show. It was a piece of work, and he chose me. Now there's a number of other Irish artists as well.
Yeah, and he found you on Instagram.
On Instagram, yeah.
Wow.
But well, obviously you'd be reacting. I was following him, and I was probably reacting to some of his posts on Instagram.
Sure.
It sort of contributed. It was a complete surprise, because he's the main, he's one of the main guys in abstraction today,
Yeah. And how did that come about? How did this idea of him curating this particular exhibition come about?
I don't know. He lived in London, and he he's moved around the world since that. But he wanted to do something in the UK. I think he always felt he didn't really he wasn't really on the level that he'd like to be in the UK. But he wanted to do something. He was back. I think he was back living in the UK for a little bit. Yep. He had met with Flowers before. He had a relationship there, and they must have obviously come up with this idea that he'd like to do something for the UK and Irish. He's an Irish background. He lived in Inchicore.
Yep.
So the idea developed from there, I guess.
And were there many other Irish artists involved in that particular?
It was about 6 or 7. Yeah, so I think I can't remember exactly the number. I think it was about 14 or 15 altogether. So it was down the middle, I think. Okay. Diane Copwhite was one.
Yes.
There's Matthew Collins from the UK. There was a number of others. Some of them were high profile, some less so.
Okay. And did this have a positive impact on your practice?
It had. Well, it's good for the CV, is to say it's great to have that, but it didn't really it hasn't made any major difference, but it's great. I was talking to some of the creators that were at the show, and some of them really liked one guy in particular who created the show in Tate in Cornwall. I don't know if you know Tate St. Ives, is it? And
oh yes, I do. Yeah. I do not know where you are. Yeah.
Go there, and he thought he really was impressed with my work. But this is sort of a long process. You don't just get a phone call the next day.
No, but that was tremendous. A tremendous thing, as you say, to have in your CV, if nothing else. It's fantastic.
Absolutely, and even just the feeling of having a piece of work in that company, and it just lifts the spirits, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I'm surprised to hear that he actually found you on Instagram.
Yeah, that is the thing.
You don't sort of associate Sean Scully flicking through his social media looking at other people's.
No,
yeah.
But
well done you for getting that.
No, thanks. He's a very ordinary. You might come across sometimes as quite. He's a strong personality, but he's actually. But he's a very down to earth. I've spoken to a few times. Spoke to him in Nima, and he's quite okay,
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the sort of the outlets for your work. Where would you say most of your work goes when you sell your work? Is it corporate? Is it personal?
It's definitely architectural.
Architectural. Okay.
Yeah, and designers and interior designers.
Interesting. Yes.
It's all that area, because the work sort of suits that. If you think of I'm not saying it should be a new build or anything like that, but if you think of the contemporary house, a lot of them are white cube now. You even see them down, but not necessarily a white cube, but
Now, just explain what you mean by that to people.
I mean that the style, the interior style of the building will suit the contemporary nature.
Yeah.
Well, I see my work as contemporary to some degree, even though it's come out of a legacy of 1960s, hard edge painting. It would sort of fit with that. It would fit with that type of architecture, and I also respond to architectural space in a lot of the work because my motifs are quite, what would you say, geometric.
Yes.
They sort of fit with architecture. They almost are part of the architecture.
And would you get commissions where they would brief you on a certain style to fit the architectural structures and whatever of their?
I've only done a few commissions, but I did do one in the last couple of years that did work very well in a new house, and I don't just change I don't adapt, but I sort of see what might work with that building. But I have a model that I follow. I'm looking at certain things.
Yes.
I don't just change it because the building looks a little bit different,
I know.
But some things will work better than others,
So before we look at them, can we have a quick look around your studio and just to see how you structure it and what materials you use and various things like that?
Okay. So it's acrylic paints here, so
they're a very good make, aren't they? Gold.
Yeah, they come from the US, but they're very good. Yeah, they're probably one of the best makers of acrylic brands.
Yeah.
Liquid-X, you see some Liquid-X there.
And what does that do? I know, but not everyone will.
Yeah, Liquid-X. Well, Liquid-X and Goldman they're both acrylic. They're just a different brand name.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was something that you actually mixed.
No. You can mix mediums.
Yeah.
You can mix your gloss or matte medium or other mediums with acrylics, but it's a different brand. Liquid-X is another brand than that.
Okay, I got confused with something else. Yeah.
Yeah, and Golden, you get your Golden can come in these type tubs as well.
And why would you use the pots as against the tubes, or is it just a volume thing?
Yes, it would be a volume thing. Yeah, because on a larger work, you may be doing a number of layers.
Sure.
So definitely more feasible to use it. You don't want to be buying a small tube if you're doing a large painting. You'll be fine. It won't work out.
Yeah. Okay.
It's too expensive. Oil paints I tend to use Old Holland, Winsor and Newton, Sennelier. You can see some of them there. So they're the and I prefer oil paint, but the thing is, oil paint you have to wait to dry.
Yes,
it's just acrylic.
So when would you use oil, Denis, as against?
If I have a little bit more time, I'll use oil. I prefer to use oil if I have. Some will do with acrylic. Yeah, it depends on deadlines and that. But I don't normally work if I have a show coming up. You're under pressure a little bit. So acrylic will acrylic just dries down quicker. And the other thing I use, there's tapes. I use a scalpel. That scalpel comes from. I've been using scalpels since 1979 or 1980.
I'm sure,
a lot in design. So different takes I take them on. So just to show, just going around.
Yes.
On the studio wall there's some computer sketches and some color tests.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this was mostly for the show in Rathfarnham moment.
Let's talk about that briefly because we hadn't mentioned it yet. You've got a solo show on Rathfarnham Castle at the moment.
That's right.
Until the 29th, I think, is it? Of June?
It's on till the 29th of June.
Yeah.
So it's on for another, 5 weeks?
Yes. Yeah, very good. So plenty of time for people to look at that. But we'll talk about that and we'll show some of the work that you have in it too later on, okay?
Yeah. So that's a scan around.
Okay, so these are pieces that are finished or maybe in progress, are they?
This one's in progress. I'm just not quite sure what I'm doing with it yet. Some are finished on the floor. paperworks.
Yes.
That's an old one that I've shown before. And over here, I'm looking at a paperwork on the right, that blue one.
Okay, and when you say paper, is it how would you then display that? Would you float mount it or something?
I'd float mount. It'd be like this one here. It's float. Just,
oh, I see. Yeah,
covered in plastic, but you can see it there.
just about. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that.
Okay.
So more.
So would a lot of your work be on paper, Denis, or?
Some, but more recently has been on paper.
Okay.
But I use wood and canvas as well. Yeah, I've been using wood quite a bit. I've been using that found wood material, which is yeah, something like it just adds some texture to the work.
Sure.
So that's how I store.
This is your paint storeroom, is it?
And so sometimes it's nice to have a lot of the storage away from when you're making work, because you sort of free up the space a little bit.
Yeah.
And you can see the work a bit better. So.
Okay.
And
what's all this tape?
That tape is from previous work where, like, some of this is from the Rat Farm show. Yeah. And that, yeah, it's just when I remove the tape that you're left with these pieces. They're interesting themselves, but I sometimes I might use part of them again, but they don't really work well a second time. But that's frog tape. So that's this particular.
I've never heard of frog tape before.
I mean, no.
No. Where will you get that, and what's the advantage of that over ordinary masking tape?
I think it just seals a little bit better on it will seal. It's really for painters, house painters.
Oh yes, okay.
Yeah, so it will seal a little bit better if you want like this badge.
Yeah, but does it lift off easy?
Yeah, it does lift off on your
without damaging.
Now it might be a bit tricky. I think I tend to use masking tape on paper. And if you heat masking paper with a hairdryer or something, it will lift a bit easier when you're removing it on paper.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's what I found.
I thought it might have had the opposite effect.
No, it actually lifts it because it softens the glue.
I remember that.
Yeah. So there's a tip. So that's
where do you get that frog tape?
You get in hardware, any hardware.
Oh right.
Hardware, yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Hardware places. So I stored some paintings, Yep. In there. So, and as regards, there's the medium that I use. There's one of the mediums, matte medium. Is it there?
Yeah.
And brushes, I tend to use these synthetic. They're flat and very, very sort of soft. They have a very so the mark is less noticeable in the painting.
I understand. Yeah. Yeah.
And then other things might be used stencils or French curves for even for cutting. I use this particular green one for cutting shapes.
Yeah.
Curve shapes. So yeah.
I'd say a lot of those implements were used in your previous life.
Yeah, so not particularly those stencils were used. Yeah,
yeah.
In early days, but so I don't know. I think that's really it.
I noticed that there was, I think it's almost on that to your right hand side on the wall. Yeah. There's quite a detailed there.
Yeah.
Talk me through that, because that looks as if it's got dimensions and all sorts of things written on.
It has
a plan for something?
It's the installed dimensions for this work, which you'll see later. This is a computer printout, the colored work. So, and then this is the installed dimensions. I printed it out in black and white and I've marked in the dimensions in pencil. So I give this to the installer of the work in Rat Farm. Yeah.
And why is that important? I mean,
well, yeah, it's sorry to go across you. It's I just find that like the line of dots across they need to be exactly along the center.
Yes.
So if I position these there's 9 pieces. I don't know how many pieces. There's 9, say. There's a number of individual pieces. and they appear on a panel. The panel is already in situ in Red Farm.
Yes.
So the installer has to piece it together. It's a bit like a jigsaw.
All right, because it's a large piece then. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a large piece, but the white area or the grey area that I don't have, it's in Red Farm. So the others are added on. So it's mounted in position. So this is what the installer.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Denis, let's go straight to look at some of your work.
Okay.
So let's start with this first one here.
Yeah.
Walk me through that.
Yeah, this was made. This is in Lexicon Gallery or Lexicon Library in Dunleary.
Yes.
Which is right next to the sea. So when I walked in, this is quite a long room. When you walk into this room, you just see this space at the end, which is normally for video projection.
Right.
But I was knowing the orientation when you walk into the building, I was expecting to see the sea, a window onto the sea, but I had this enclosed space. So the idea was that I paint the idea of the sea which echoes some of the boat masts.
Yes.
Are along the promenade, along the pier. So I just and it's really about movement, but that's where the idea came from walking along the promenade, where you get this idea of a boat mast. But I didn't want to describe the boat mast. I wanted to make a motif that would travel left to right. So that it is rendered on 3 walls of that space. So when you go in, you're surrounded, by that.
And did you actually paint that in situ? That's actually painted on the wall.
Painted in situ. Yeah, I had an installer that actually had to do it as well.
Yeah, but I love that, because if you walk down a marina, look up, it's exactly what you see.
Yeah, it's it's more of the feeling. It's more, rather than describing, because if you look at both masts closely, you don't actually see exactly that, but it's just the idea,
Exactly. Yeah.
So this is in Newbridge. This is what I won the Emerging Artist Award in 2015. So this exhibition was in 2016. It's called Structure Void, and in this case, I made another wall painting. And the idea was to sort of suggest a depth through that wall, but there's a vertical pillar right through the center, so I can use that instead. So I didn't paint the white on either side. So when you walk past that, you walk around, it actually disappears into the void, into the circle, and it disappears. So if I didn't do that, what's really that interesting about it? There isn't anything really that interesting about it. But because I did leave it white, it sort of works, on a different level.
Okay. And are the other works to the right-hand side, are they yours as well?
Yes, they're all part of it. Yeah, actually, that one on the right is in the Farm show. It's one of the few. I've 1 or 2 older works that I've put in.
Yeah, and I think we might see that, do we?
Yeah, you do actually. Yeah, you see that in angle. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, where I've intervened in the architecture of Palace Studios here, or Palace Studios Gallery, and they have this rotating wall at the center there, and I've left it at an oblique. That can go right back to the wall, or it can go vertical to the wall, or it can put it at an angle like I did. So I thought it was a bit more dynamic at an angle.
Yes.
And I just intervened very simply by painting the edges and then joining the corners. So it gives a sort of perspective space.
Sure. And the reverse of it, is that painted as well?
The very same. And there's another one behind the camera, on the wall behind the camera, which is actually a parallelogram. It's actually pushed, it's this-shaped, pushed to the right. So it looks like it moved. Yes. But we can't show everything.
So I know.
Yeah. But but that was the idea.
All right. And this, I think, is a close-up of what was
a close-up of the works at the far end there. Yes. So they're on found wood, this found wood material. And really, these paintings come out of those markings on the left, and lower left on the yellow green is a black marking of some typography on the found wood. So I used that to compose the full piece. So from there it started. So it's really about movement again. This line meandering through a grid, but I don't actually have it centered. You can see that it's asymmetrical. That they look like they continue past the painting, and that's the idea there. And similar on the right, the top left circle is a letter form, and then I've built from there.
Okay. And tell me, do you put titles on your work, Denis? Or do you leave it completely up to the viewer to?
Yeah, well, back then I've used, I think that one on the left is called grey, yellow, green, something like that. Some arbitrary title. It's a little bit like Rothko used to do, Mark Rothko, you know, so that you love. But more recently, I've been using more poetic. I've been bringing a little bit more emotion into the title. So, you know, so that's what I've been. Well, that's on a Red Farm, actually.
Okay.
Again, this one this motif comes from the outside world. It's a Georgian. The top half of that blue shape is a fan light from a Georgian building, and I just flipped it over. But it either could be seen as a object, a blue object on a grey background, so a figure in space, or looking through to a blue, like looking through two blue clouds, through the white clouds, through a blue sky. So it can be either. And I just like that dichotomy between one switching from figure to ground. It's a Gestalt sort of theory, you know, where in one instance it's figure, in the next instance it's ground, it's background.
Yeah. Okay.
And in this particular painting, I think the interesting part about this was that I used an oil, but I also used a gouache acryl, which is that very dark black in the center.
Yeah.
And you don't register. It's a bit like Anish Kapoor, who you can't register light. It's very, very dark. It's got a real velvety feel. So it's sort of, again, suggesting a deeper space. And the arts sort of suggest movement, but also infer the illusion of depth, like if you're going around in a round corner, you know.
Yeah.
It has that, but it's mainly everything is reduced to very simple terms, you know. Again, this is one on canvas, and it's really monochrome. Three yellows, I think I called this at the time. It's mainly that background light yellow. It actually, if you look at the lower half, it's very much in the background on the top, but when you get to the bottom, it becomes figure. It slips over that darker color, that darker diagonal. So those little simple interventions, I like sort of subtly. Some of them are maybe too subtle. I'm not quite sure, but you know.
I mean, it's the sort of thing that the more you look at, the more you actually see.
Yeah, I'm trying to slow the viewing of it down a little bit, and I'm trying the viewer to take part in putting the pieces together to some extent, you know.
Yes. Now the next one is something I believe you were doing with your twin sister, Mary.
Right. Yeah.
So your twin sister is also an artist, am I right? Or is she a writer or poet?
She's a writer. She does some writing and poetry.
Yes.
We collaborated on this. This work is on paper.
Okay.
It's oil on paper, and again, I'm playing with space again here, and so we put this show together, myself and Mary. This was in Kildare Library, and the idea of the oval and the rectangle sort of slip in and out between planes, and the randomness of the dots sort of are a counter to that. They bring that playful aspect to it. So and of course the shape is, and it's a negative. It's that space, the bridges cross shape, but it's the negative space. It's not there, but the white is making it. If you know.
Yes.
It's putting the color in the negative areas around. You see the shape.
Exactly.
So And in the next one, I think I show, there's a haiku poetry here from Mary on the right, which haiku, haiku is,
Yes.
So it's
3 lines.
575, 575 syllables. So,
Do you want to read that out, because it's a bit small?
Yeah,
watching this on a phone.
It's Ladybird sits in suspended animation. Winter's moving in.
Yeah,
and of course my part again was in. I did the layout because I work in design and typography, so we laid it out quite spatially. Myself and Mary were just talking. So, and the one on the right sort of relates in that it sort of hangs. That circle looks like it's hanging in. It's suspended. It looks suspended from the top left.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, and this is what we referred to earlier as one of the highlights of your career, when Sean Scully discovered you.
That's right.
So I'll just show one or two images from that. No, I think there's just, oh no, there's 2.
But this is the painting. Again, it's a piece of found wood in oil. And it's just got a very little simple, that outline follows all. It creates the cream figure becomes forward, and then it slips over in the bottom right. It slips over. So, and
do you have a title for that?
I think at the time, it's something like, it was untitled, grey cream pink, something like that.
All right, okay. And then this is a sort of a wide-angle view.
Yeah, this is what
Sean's painting on the left.
And my painting is the one that's least visible. It's the one that's there. So, but it is discreet and it works very well. That's a Johnny Abrahams painting in the middle, where he scrapes his black right down, and on the left is David Allen Taylor. But it works. It worked really. It was a really nice installation.
Yes. So how long was that exhibition on for?
It was on for, I think it was on for about 4 weeks. 4, even longer, 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. And did it get much media attention in Ireland?
Yeah, I did. I remember at the opening I saw, is that Soriano? She's on Sky Arts. Do you know that lady, Soriano?
I probably know her to see.
At the opening anyway. But there's quite a number of people.
Yeah.
And that's Scully on the left there, in the green.
And this is one that got into the RHA, and I particularly love this one. I chose this one to put on.
You did.
Yeah, without consultation. And actually, I didn't realize that it had been in the RHA or anything. It just stood out to me.
Yeah, it is. It does. It's that blue makes it quite strong. So again, I'm playing with spatial illusion here, really.
Yes.
So it's back and forward, and like in that oval in the center is a space where you look through to see the red line. But at the bottom, it becomes more solid and sits in that bottom left. So,
it's funny. It starts to play with your eyes. The more you look, you start to see different things in different positions and depth and so on.
Yeah.
Now, this is your current exhibition in the beautiful surroundings of Rathfarnham Castle. And if any of you haven't been there, you really should make an effort to try and see it. It's an absolutely stunning building. But the rooms inside, actually, it's not a stunning building. I think it's quite a boring building, but once you go inside, it is extraordinary. And the architectural features are superb as well. And your exhibition, I think, covers about 3 different rooms, does it?
It's 3 rooms, Alan. Yeah. You're looking from a reception area or reception room into the dining room. That's into the dining room. So that's the portal you're looking through. I actually like that. Notice that the markings, the dots of the painting traveling left and right, is picking up on some of the motifs on the architecture here. I just noticed a few things like that. It's amazing. But
let's zoom in.
Yeah, zoom in. This motif was inspired by stained glass, which is on the opposite wall, the opposite of the reception room. It picks up on that octagonal shape. And by changing the color yellow, by adding a deeper yellow, I give it a three-dimensional sort of feel. So that's got a centerpiece, and then it's got two corner pieces. But both those corner pieces are one on the right, lower right, is a deeper yellow than the one on the left. So you're creating that sort of depth. And then those circular pieces are other than the two in the center of the octagon are 3D, are cut out of plywood.
Yeah, they're standing proud from the background.
Yes, the standing proud. So does that from a distance it looks, oh, it's, yeah, I can see what it is. And then you get closer and it becomes, there's things change and it becomes three-dimensional. So it's like on that red circle on the extreme left, that sort of has stopped, it sits behind, it's a suggestion that it's sitting behind the triangle, and on the right it's sitting in front.
In front, yes. And this presumably is the manifestation of that drawing that we saw on the wall earlier on.
That actually, yeah, that drawing you saw is the installation guide for this particular work. Yeah.
And so what you would have done there is you would have had panels, wood panels, that you cut first and paint, I presume, and then put them on top of the other board.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Now we should also point out that because it's a protected building, you're not allowed to nail things on the wall. So all of your work is displayed on lovely big easels.
Yeah, everything is on easels because we want to move everything away from the wall and see behind something.
Yeah. So we're going to show that again, but let's just discuss this one before we move on to that.
Yeah, that's that yellow painting you saw in the earlier thing. So it's a found wood veneer and glued to plywood. So it's not about recycling as such. It's about finding a mark that I can use with my geometry.
Okay.
And that's made in iron. That's talking in iron.
And what appears to be indentations, are they?
Are
they part of the found wood?
Yeah, they are exactly that, and they sort of animate the piece. So if you have a very strict geometry,
yes,
I like to sort of antagonize that a little bit by bringing in a mark like that.
Yeah,
you know.
Sure. Yep. Okay, and then this is another view in another room.
Yeah, that's again along on. It's to the left of that particular long room, which is the next room. And that has, I wanted to show on the left that larger board. There's two large boards on the left, and you can see the edge of the wood along that and how it fits together. So there's 5 pieces in that particular panel that were pieced together by the installer.
Okay. Yeah. And then on the right-hand side, are they smaller pieces on a whiteboard, or is
they're the smaller paintings sitting on the board.
So they're displayed in that. The white isn't necessarily part of the work per se. Yeah.
And then on the end is a 2-piece. It's a diptych.
Okay. And there are 2 more pieces we'd like to show.
Yeah, that's
this one.
Yeah, that's one of the paintings. It's called Restraining Yellow. And again, it has a muted sort of. I sometimes use strong color along with a muted. Don't know why that is, but I sometimes do it. Again, maybe in the found wood, it is a sort of a muted color.
Yeah.
And then I brought in this very strong color. And again, there's a switch here from the left to the right, where the yellow is in one area on the left. It's in a different area on the right. But it looks like it's being restrained. But restraining yellow could mean the yellow is very restraining, or it could mean the yellow is being restrained. So there's a sort of in the title.
Yes,
it could be a switch. So. And again, allow the mark. You see the top of that. There's some slits in the wood.
Yes, I do up here. Yeah,
I'm quite happy that they're there.
And there, presumably.
Yeah. There's marks. Yeah.
Interesting. They're very sculptural in ways. Were you ever tempted to convert one of your pieces into?
Yeah, I have. I haven't done it, but yeah, it is. I mean, you know, by that yellow work, that long one that we were showing. Yes. I mean, that is, the elements of that are sculptural,
aren't they? Very much so. And I mean, even this one, maybe to a lesser extent, but
Yeah.
But nonetheless. And is this part of Rathfarnham?
Yeah, that's one of the other panels in that long room.
Yeah.
And and this again, it starts with, it's called blue note because the deeper blue looks like a note, but it also, that blue starts as a background in the top right.
Yeah.
And then becomes bigger. It comes down in front of the pink and exits down. It sort of anchors the piece on the lower left. Sure. And then you have the lighter blue that sits behind, that makes that pink in the foreground. But then when you go to the right hand side, because you'll always follow, if you look at a color, you'll find the same color, you'll be drawn to it. And on the right, it sits in a pink space. So yes. Switching from behind, it's making the pink space an actual portal, a spatial.
Yeah.
But they're very simple, you know, but they do require quite a bit of thought, you know.
Well, absolutely. And what I was also thinking, Denis, is you know the way colors are very, very often reflecting emotion or mood or something like that, depending on whether you're looking at a pink or a blue being cold, you know, and then to the warmer colors of yellow, red, and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. How much of that is intentional in terms of trying to create a mood for the piece?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a color is very tricky. When you put one color against another color, it changes.
Or it can clash.
Yeah, or it can clash, exactly. Yeah, and it depends what you want exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I think like that particular yellow work that you saw back, the full yellow one we saw an angle. That further back the full yellow one, which that one, yeah. I mean, that was really. I mean, I think my thoughts at the time were was a summertime, was that sort of bright and that sort of that enlightening color, you know.
Yeah. Yes.
That give you lift. So and that yellow piece that was all pieced together, that quite long one before, that was quite a dark room, and this sort of picks up on some of the colors of the stained glass, but it's also an uplifting. It's an uplifting thing. So color does, you know.
But when you do that, Denis, whether it's on a sketch or playing around with colors before you actually create the piece,
yeah.
Do you find that your mood is actually having a say in what you're doing?
Possibly is.
Or are you purely looking at a geometric shape and quite clinical about it, as you would have been in your career, probably?
Yeah, I think I look at form first.
Yes.
And then color comes next.
Okay.
Because color is color is difficult and it's shifty. It can move from one. You don't know. You can come in one day and the color, I'm not really happy with that, you know.
Well, I was just thinking, would you ever change a color because it just doesn't work?
Yes, often. I would.
Often?
Yeah. I would.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Before we move away from images, I want to talk to you about your influences, about people who really kind of, you know, inspire you and motivate you to do your own thing. And you've mentioned 3 people. I only generally allow 1, but I've cheated. I've let you cheat, I should say. So here are 2 artists, and talk me through those and what you like about them in particular.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more. These were just
I know. Yeah.
big tests. So yeah, I only discovered I only really looked at. I heard of Milton Avery. He's an American painter who was in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But and he started out a landscape painter, and he became more reductive as he went along. So everything was, as he says himself, he took more out than he put in. So he removed stuff from his painting. So I forget what the name of this is, the beach towels or something like that.
All right.
It's at the beach, and it's like there's towels left at the beach. But he's painted in a very reductive way. And I presume that's the line at the sea, because the sea can look, in certain light, the sea can look very black or very dark. That's the line. I just love the simplicity of that. And you could say it's a figurative work, but it's almost abstract as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. Yeah. One on the right, Richard Smith.
Richard Smith is, I hadn't heard, he's a UK, again, he's not alive, today, and he made some tremendous work. I was over in London a couple of years ago, and I saw a gallery in central London, and Richard Smith exhibition, and I was amazed by it, that I hadn't heard of Richard Smith before. Now, a lot of people have heard, but I didn't know Richard Smith. And I first came across Richard Smith through Flowers Gallery. I think they represent his work.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing about Richard was that when he went overseas, he went to the US for a while around the time of the abstract expressionists and painting America. But to make a large work, when he went overseas, he'd never make it over there. He'd make the work. When he was going to an exhibition, he would actually make the work in situ, that was interesting, because you can imagine the difficulties in sending large pieces of work, because he made some very large work. So he made it over there. Now, I don't know what he did on the return journey.
Well, hopefully he sold it, so he wouldn't have to bring it back.
Maybe.
And tell me, this one we're looking at here,
it's canvas.
Looks as if it's paper interweaved.
Yeah, it's canvas. It's acrylic on canvas, and he has cut the canvas and slipped pieces of wood through. So it's sculptural. It's funny that you mentioned sculpture. Yeah. So it's nice. But this had lovely drawings as well, this particular show, and quite some very large pieces. And a lot of them come out, it actually comes out from the wall on the bottom. You can see the shell. It just swings out towards you.
Okay. And the last one I'm allowing you.
Yeah.
Is this one.
Amy Knoble, he's a German artist, and he's very prolific at the moment. Like, he's very contemporary, but I mean, I'm not quite sure what age he is. He's 80s, I think. But this is made on metal. It's on steel or aluminium, and it's painted in acrylic. And it's unusual for me to pick something that has quite a brushy stroke, but it has quite a brushy feel to it, where the paint is added on and layered. There's layers of acrylic paint, and it's cut. I think he uses a water laser to cut this shape out, and it's raised out from the wall. And I saw this work in the White Cube in London there a couple of years back. It was a beautiful exhibition. Once Upon a Time, I think it was called. It was absolutely fantastic.
Is that a very large piece?
Yeah, it is. It's not massive, but it's about 1.5 meters, I think, square.
Yeah, I was just thinking that because, I mean, it wouldn't make much impact unless it was quite a large.
Yeah, I think
in my view,
work, you have to be in front of it, like a lot of painting, to really, you have to, to see the scale, to sort of feel it,
Okay, Denis, that's great. That gives a very good flavor of your work and what you're doing. And just before we go on to other stuff, just tell us about your exhibition in Rathfarnham. I know how long it's going on. So it's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. The times are. Let me see.
That's what I was getting at. What times?
This Echoes and Edges is called.
Yeah. Oh yes.
And there's the times. Can you see?
So daily 9:30 to 5:30.
Yeah.
Last admission 4:45. And is it every day?
It's every day, Sundays as well.
Sundays as well. Oh, right. Okay.
Double check Sundays, because I'm not quite sure if it closes a bit earlier than 5:30.
Maybe.
Sometimes it might have been a bit early. But I want to thank the OPW and Kildare County Council for the support for that exhibition.
Yeah.
And
as I say, if you haven't been to Rathfarnham Castle, it's really worth.
Yes, it is.
Visit. In its own right, as well as to see a wonderful exhibition.
Yeah.
Margie Dunn says, you mentioned plywood. What other wood do you use in your work?
Well, I actually don't. Well, MDF maybe. The found wood can be different materials, I presume. Because the found wood is about a 2 millimeter or 1.5, 2 millimeter.
Yeah.
But I mainly use birch plywood because I think it's the most stable. But again,
just as a matter of interest, your found wood, where do you found that?
I find it in skips in building stores.
I was just wondering what sort of scavenger you were.
After the morning scavenging.
Very good. Okay. Pauline Flynn says, lovely work, Denis. Great that you returned to your designer self, back to what you do best, as you say.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah, no, there's definitely, obviously it's had a huge impact on your work. Margie, did you want to say something? I've noticed you've unmuted yourself.
No, the work is fascinating. He gave a great presentation there. It was very enjoyable.
Thank you very much.
Good stuff.
The great accuracy in your work. You must have great patience.
It does. It's trying sometimes.
Yeah. Well done.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Margie. So any plans while we're waiting for somebody else? Any plans for the future?
Yeah.
Beyond Rathfarnham?
I'm going to do some work on paper for my next exhibition, which will be it's in Nice. And so those floating frames that you were looking at earlier,
yeah,
about around that size, 70 centimeters by 50.
Okay. And so where in Nice, Denis, is it?
It's going to be there's a new library in Nice, a lovely exhibition space.
Right.
So I hope to show it there.
Yeah.
And afterwards, I'm going to sort of develop after that. I would really like to sort of develop my overseas, London or Germany. I have a paperwork in Germany, anonymous drawings.
Yeah.
But I would like, expand in that direction, really.
Sure. Okay. Well, you might go as far as Australia now, because we have Nick Vickers here, who I see is also unmuted himself.
Yes, I might go.
Nick, would you like to say something?
I would, and it was so interesting to listen to Denis just talking about how he got to the point that he is, and those optical illusions are absolutely fascinating. But I'm really interested in your choice of colors, because you're keeping well away from all of the primaries. You're getting into some quite sort of tertiary and secondary tertiary kind of colors. Where did that come from? Your time in design and advertising, or?
Yeah, it's very, I don't know, it's subconscious, I think, Nick. Yeah, I did notice that I used some muted palette in some areas, and then quite closely is quite a strong color, like a purple or, so it's, God only knows, I don't know. I haven't an answer to that really, but
No, but it's fascinating. I mean,
it is.
So many geometric artists, they tend to sort of select their colors very cautiously. I mean, you've gone even more cautious than the most cautious. So
I know some people who buy the tube and just use that color, and then others who will mix,
And which are you?
I do both. I mix them. I do, because to get those muted colors, you would mix.
Do you use brushes, or do you ever use rollers? Because your work looks so smooth.
I use that synthetic smooth brush. There's a certain consistency to the paint. You put some layers on that you don't get the brush marks. Well, you will, but you don't see them. And a downward brush mark won't show as obvious as a horizontal, because they're not light. Yeah, they're normally lit from above.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. And did you ever consider using a roller, as Nick says?
No. Oh, sorry, roller. You broke up a little bit. No, I didn't like the texture of the roller. There was a certain texture you get with a roller. Now, maybe that sinks in a little bit. I haven't experimented enough with it, but I don't know if you know Peter Halley of New York. He uses a roller. I think there's a texture that he's after.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Nick. Any other question?
No. Thank you so much. That was fascinating.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Thanks, Nick. Anybody else before we go? No? Okay. I just check one other thing. No, that's it. Yeah. Okay. So, Denis, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
I wish you every success with your exhibition.
Thank you.
It's fascinating. Well, I'm hoping to come in and see it at some stage, but there is plenty of time, which is good. And I wish you continued success.
Thanks very much, Alan, and thanks very much for inviting me to the show. Really enjoyed it. Yeah.
You're very welcome. So, guys, look, thank you all for watching and for coming along and tuning in this morning. It is much appreciated. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It costs nothing, and it does the old street cred quite a lot of good, and also attracts wonderful artists. My guest next week is very interesting insofar as a film was made about him, and that film is on Netflix. And I'm going to say no more than that, but I think you'd be interested in joining us and having a look at that. And we'll be playing clips from that film. So look forward to seeing you next week. Enjoy the rest of the weekend and take care, everyone. Bye-bye.